Hi, everybody. I'm Ginny Schuster with Contact Mapping, which is a mini CRM. And what I love about it is that I get to connect with lots of people. So today we're going to connect with Steve Solis, who is a sales manager for Independence Roofing and Exteriors. He's out of Greeley. And we want to learn all about roofing because it seems as though there are many roofers out there. You've been doing it for what, 35 years, Steve?
35 years straight. Oddly enough, I started with my father, who was a general contractor in 1967. So whatever
Ooh,
those numbers are, that's a
yeah,
long time ago.
yeah, who cares?
Who cares? Let's get past three.
We're not counting that. Just
No,
that
right,
we have the quality of 35 years of experience, which is very important
right,
in the business
right.
world.
Yeah.
So you
I
got into it because of him.
It was the story is my father and mother were going through a separation divorce at that time, and he would pick me up once in a while to go to work in the summertime, and he took me to Boulder, and he preferred framing houses. He was working on a project up there in Boulder, and he walked into the superintendent's office the week before and said that he was going to bid the framing for this particular builder. The superintendent liked his numbers, and he said, "Do you do any roofing?" And my dad said, "Yeah, I do it, but I don't like it." He said, "You want the framing, got to do the roofing." So
Oh,
enter the high school son. So that's where it all began. But we only did that once in a while. Mostly it was framing. When I needed a job after going through several career changes, I called up contacting a company that was listed in the Rocky Mountain News under the Help Wanted ads, and knew I could do it. I wasn't thrilled about it because it was November.
oh,
And
yeah.
even though that the weather was good at that point, for 2 weeks it was wonderful. And then we had one of the harshest winters we ever had here in Colorado. So
Ooh.
that's where it
Oh,
all
I
started,
remember
and
that.
got after it. I needed to pay the bills, so I did what I had to do.
Got to do what you got to do. So you work for them for a while?
19 and a half years. I was the longest running employee of CJ Roofing, except for the owner himself. Yeah.
That's very unusual.
Yeah, I really thought I was going to retire there, but things change. The owner, he had his kids be part of the company. Philosophies were changing just a little bit, and it didn't sound like I was going to be part of that future. So I decided to move on, unfortunately. But I really thought I was going to retire there, and I was very proud to be a part of one of the largest and most productive roofing companies in the state of Colorado for history. Actually, they were very,
Wow.
had to move on. And so I've been to a few companies, but started with Independence about 3.5 years ago. So a good
Well,
friend is the owner.
it sounds as though you were in new construction for the roofs. Is that correct?
Well, when I was roofing, yes, for the most part, yes. After a while, the bosses wanted me to do more re-roofing, and I was kicking and screaming because the advantage of new construction, the only reason to even need a truck is to carry your ladder because most of the materials are delivered to new construction sites. So I would just drive there and get to work. OSHA rules were there, but they weren't as involved in Colorado at that point. Once they did, things really kind of changed. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I did that for a while, but they kind of forced me to do in re-roofing because they appreciated the work that I did in new construction and wanted me to do that. And so I did. I got me some trailers and et cetera, started doing them. But one of the nice things about doing re-roofing is that you actually meet the homeowner. You talk to them, you introduce
Oh, good
yourself,
point.
you do your work, they appreciate it. Some of them will tip you, actually, but they show their appreciation for the work because they can see that you've done a good job and you clean up really well, and people appreciate that, and they see that it's done good. And then the evidence of not getting any leaks, obviously important. That's
Oh,
the deal, right?
right. Before they move in all their furniture and everything.
Right. And especially for those that, not only maybe they got hit with hail, but also they had leaks before or issues of one kind or another, and you've resolved it, and it's obvious that you've done good. I miss that part of it, the direct satisfaction of what you did from the person, the recipient of who you're doing the work for. Of course, at that time, someone else was selling the job. I was just the implementer of the work itself. And so that company required us to be very knowledgeable of the building codes and the manufacturer specs. That's what the key is here. And then to be able to do it the way that they say and do it right. So they always got permits for the work that they did. So I was part of a company that really worked hard to try to do it well as far as that goes. So.
And so on re-roofing, about all that I know is there's a lot of hail damage here in Colorado. That's what you kind of hinted at with the re-roofing. So how does that work? How do people find you? I know that we had connected in One BC, the networking group,
right.
But how does it work other than that? Is there a sales team that calls people up, or do they go around different cities and look at the roofs and knock on the door?
Right here.
Yeah. Me,
yeah, I am
Steve,
actually, we're a small company. I'm actually, between me and the owner of the company, are the only real salespeople. And the roofers themselves, we have several crews that are very experienced long-term roofers, but they're subcontractors, and we do require the proper paperwork and insurance to make sure that people we send out are the very best. And I mean, these guys are amazing. I didn't hire them, but I feel like I did, because you hire people when you're given that position, hire people more conducive to your own personality.
Oh,
and,
true. Yes.
I was very particular about my work, and these guys are too. I'm just amazed with them. So when it comes to marketing, mostly me, but we are working on expanding our presence. Now, sometimes that's the internet, Google, whatever like that. Because as you said, there's many roofing companies. I think there's 3,400 roofing companies in the Front Range area.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. Wow.
State of Colorado, it's somewhere around, I know it's more than double that. So
wow.
I'm thinking like 7,000 or more companies. And that doesn't count whenever you get a hailstorm. Many of these companies come from out of state, and they open up shop. Now, back 20, even 30 years ago, when there was a storm, what they would do is they would come in, they would find a small operation like ours. They'd give the owner of the company a suitcase full of money, $140,000 was the typical. We'll use your license for 6 months, and we'll leave you some money at the end. So if there's any warranty issues, you can take care of that. Well, generally speaking, they would ruin his name, number one, and then there wouldn't be enough money for all the issues that they were having, because it's typical of them to just slam it through. They wouldn't get permits a lot of times. Essentially, the business suffered from a lot of negativity because of these kinds of companies. Today, they don't care if you know that they're from Texas or Oklahoma or anything else. They just come in and blatantly say, this is who we are. We'll pay your deductible, which is illegal in the state of Colorado and in most states of the country. And many people don't know that.
Yeah.
So when you're getting your insurance, it is important to know, what are you going to have to pay versus what the insurance company. Do you have a replacement policy or an actual cash value or something, some hybrid of some other kind of insurance? So it is important for you to know, and many people get stuck with having to pay for half the roof out of their own pocket.
No kidding. So since that happens to a lot of people, what are questions that people should know to be asking that person who comes and leaves the flyer on the door or knocks on the door and you're there? What should we be asking?
Right. One of the great things is, wherever your local municipality happens to be, whether it be city or county, most of them have a list of things to question and ask for. I could throw out my own list there, but sometimes if you get it from the local who are recognized professionals, that will help guide you through that thing and ask, what are the things on that list that you should be talking to these contractors about? Just because they're long-term doesn't necessarily mean they're very good. One of the things we realized at CJ Roofing, at one point we had something like 125 roofers. I mean, talking about shinglers. I didn't count the guys working on flat crew, the gutter crew, and any other types of things. I remember we had something like 9 supervisors. So,
oh my, wow.
So it was a tremendously large company for Colorado. And so what was happening is that you begin to lose a little bit of control.
Right.
And
With that many people, lack of communication amongst the supervisors.
How large is the Denver area and Front Range now? So if you had work going regularly from Castle Rock to Longmont, we did work outside of that, but that was the greater part. And these supervisors were working 7 days a week to oversee their people in theory, and things began to get a little bit out of hand. So if a company follows general labor guidelines for oversight, you're not going to have as much problem. But many of these companies have no supervision at all. If they get to the municipality, they'll have a list, say, what questions should I be asking these contractors? What about what kind of insurance do you have? Do you have workers' comp? Is it your policy or is it the roofer's policy? What used to happen, and it still happens today, if you're a roofer and you go to work for a company, they'll say, do you have a workers' comp policy? And yes or no. And a lot of times they wouldn't have one. And what they would do is they would sign a waiver with the main contractor that they're working for, because in the state of Colorado, you're not required to have workers' comp unless you have one employee or more. But because everyone that's working with this crew leader is a subcontractor as well, they may not even be registered with the state. The state doesn't require that there's a workers' comp policy. So if somebody gets injured, it falls to the homeowner.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yes, it's a big ouch. And actually, and I don't mean to demean accidents on the work site. If a guy gets killed, it's generally a payment and it's done. But if he gets an injury that's lifelong, that has to be paid by their insurance for his life. Insurance is a big deal. Yeah. So we have our own workers' comp policy and general liability policy, so that with certain builders and certain organizations, you have to prove that you have this in order to work on their projects and stuff like that. So generally, we're talking government, schools and that. So insurance is one of the big things. So background experience, ask about the supervision, how do your prices compare with everyone else? How do you deal with the insurance? Who does that calculating for you? There's a lot of things, and I recommend to people that they do as much due diligence before anybody even walks in your door.
Yeah.
Because you can find out a lot about a business. What I used to carry in my folder, and I would send it to people ahead of time, I have my referral list. There would be at least 30 names of customers that I have done work for. We actually used to put our banker's direct line phone number on that list, because if you want to know what kind of business we run, do we pay our bills? You can talk to him because he can tell you whether we pay our bills or not. We're not doing that currently. With this company, I've not asked to be able to do that. But, that's pretty bold, to be able to put that out there. We would put the names of our several representatives from suppliers, because they're the ones that get paid for materials that we purchase. And you can ask them, we pay our bills. Are we timely with it? Are we ever late? All that stuff. What do you want to know about a business, just business in general? And then when it comes to roofing, building departments can't recommend anybody, and the inspectors can't, in theory. But in other words, they can't say, check out Independence Roofing, because they can't connect themselves with the liability of recommending a company.
Oh, so that's a liability issue?
To a point, it could be if something goes south. But the issue is what I tell people, you can call down there and say, are you Mr. Inspector or Miss Inspector? Are you familiar with these guys over at Independence Roofing? They may or may not be, because with 3,400 roofing companies, they may not be knowing you too much. And they might say, no, I'm not in particular familiar with them. And you could say, are you aware of any issues that are registered with the city or county with this company? And they can say, well, I don't see anything on record to show that they are good, bad, or indifferent. Well,
it's all a matter of how you phrase that question.
Correct.
So say it again. I think that's very important that people hear that.
Right. Are you familiar with this company? And are you aware of any issues with this company concerning working in your city or municipality.
Perfect.
And so
Yeah.
that way, you know, and the greater part of them, they're not going to be totally familiar. But when I was at CJ Roofing, everybody knew who they were, you know, because they were one of the top companies in the state.
Yeah.
They were always in the top 4 volume companies for 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So,
Well, this was way back before Colorado expanded to what we are now. It seems as though the last 15 years, 10 to 15 years, the population has just exploded.
right. Now we don't do, and you're talking new construction. So people are moving in, they're building more and all of that. We're not really getting involved in that because there's really slim money dealing with that sort of thing. High expectation, very little profit to be had in there. I really like doing that. I mean, I had 8 years of myself doing the work, but it's difficult to make it go like that. So even smaller companies, the guy that operates out of his basement, he's probably good for stuff like that. But again, what kind of history does he have? Can he prove it? And do they do well?
Yeah.
The thing about new construction that people don't really have much confidence now, unless you're doing a custom build. And so we have a number of custom builders we work with that know us, believe in us. We have an ongoing agreement about how much we charge to give them the best deal that we can. And they have confidence in us that what we do is going to be right. And in my knowledge, dealing with these custom builders for these 3 years with this company, we've never had a inspection issue ever.
That's
by the
wonderful.
way,
Wow.
by the way, the Better Business Bureau, they have their accredited standard, and they used to call it a gold standard, that you haven't had any negative calls or negative reviews on your company for 3 years or more. To my knowledge, and I've checked on the website, there has not been a negative review in the history of this company, which is almost 9 years.
I was going to ask you about them. Are they still a good source for going to and looking up businesses to verify that they're a quality company?
Yes, they're better now than they have been for a long time.
Okay. Good to know.
Let's go back a little bit. So let's say 20 to 30 years ago, usually the seniors, they had confidence in it because it was one of the honest areas you could go to find out whether a company was good or not. And they improved on record keeping and all that sort of thing back in the day. But then again, what was happening is they were being a little too lenient. I remember a homeowner called me and he said, hey, I got a bid from this other company and I called the Better Business Bureau. They seemed to be on the same level as you guys. But one of the things they told me, because I looked at their record, and they had over 100 complaints last year. What they do with a complaint is that they send a letter, at that time a letter, now email, to the company, and they'd say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so had an issue with their roof replacement with you, and it seems unresolved. What are you going to do about it? And you would respond, and you would take care of it, and it would be done. So in their opinion, at that time, you could get 100 complaints, resolve 100 of them, and be on the same level as CJ Roofing, which would have 0 complaints.
No kidding.
Now, in my opinion, and I expressed it very forcefully at that time because I was a manager, you can't put them and us on the same level.
Yeah.
You know, because we had 0 and they had 100. How can you say it's the same? Now, I wasn't the only one complaining about this. There were many contractors saying, what good are you guys?
Right.
So it took a while, and then they started a care program, which put it at a higher status. If you were in the care program, you got little or no complaints, and people could see that on your record and say, oh, well, there's only 10 companies in the state that meet this criteria. Okay. And then they started the gold, I think it was silver and then gold standard, I don't recall offhand, which was no calls in 3 years or more. And and then they started the accredited, and then the accredited plus, I believe it's what it's called. So they're a better source now than they've been for a while. And so I have confidence, but it's not the only place to check for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a good place to check.
Yeah.
And of course, your neighbors, your friends, or probably your neighbor you don't like. Okay. I've actually had that. I got a call from a guy, I remember a few years ago, and he said, hey, I'd like you guys to give a bid on my re-roof job over here. And I don't even remember the city. And he said, the reason I'm calling you is because you just did so-and-so's roof a couple doors down from mine. I don't like that guy at all, but I do know this about him, that anybody that he hires to do work on his house are top notch because he does all the investigation. He checks you out. He checks your license. He checks your insurance and all of that. And if he hired you, then I know you're good. So we went and got the
hilarious.
job. It was sold before I walked in the door.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I know an awful lot I've listened to the radio show with Mike Rosen. I believe that's who it is, who's the lawyer. And there are a lot of complaints, not necessarily roofing, but all sorts of different things, whether it's cars.
Right.
And, but roofing is one item that our son's neighbor was having problems with her roofing. And we suggested that she call Mike Rosen. But some people are intimidated by that. So there's Mike Rosen as one way for people to reach out in the Denver area.
Right.
But you want your job done properly, and you want to do investigation so that you don't have to go through that sort of thing.
Right.
And then I have a question for you. What about Angie's List? Because that's really taken off over, I don't know how long they've been around, but for a while it was a paid service, and people really gave her a lot of accreditation and felt that that was a good place to advertise and market their business. Is that still a good place?
They are a paid referral service. My former wife had worked for one of the biggest ones. They changed their names now, and if I mention that name, you would know it.
Oh, okay.
And so what the deal is it sounds like a good idea, and it's not a bad place to start or involve necessarily. I was on that list, and I remember people commenting to me from that service and customers saying, well, your prices are too high. Well, I said, how do you know that? Said, well, because the other companies came in and they would give the dollar amount, and it would always be less. We were one of 5 primary companies, and not with Angie's List, this other group. We were always the highest of those 5. Well, the other 4 were companies I just described. They work out of their basement or the back of their truck. They have no overhead. They have no brick and mortar. They have none of that. They have no real overhead per se. And so it's not really a fair comparison. And besides, I can prove that it's not too high because, especially if it's insurance, we simply run the same kind of numbers for the same scope and cost as the insurance companies do. So it should be equal, but because little Joe over here maybe can do it for $1,000 less, that's certainly his business. The numbers that are provided by the insurance companies are provided through a third-party group that all they do is figure out what the costs are here in our local area. So if you match those numbers, you're not too high, you're just running industry standard. So, and there's a reason why the numbers are what they are, because they recognize profitability, not only for companies that are in existence, but to keep you in business. So that we don't have to have a constant turnover of companies, which we do anyway.
Yeah.
But so the numbers weren't there, and so, but they didn't care because they could get it done for less. Sorry, realtors, sometimes that's what they do, is that they get the least price. Well, number one, it's not your business. Number two, let the customer decide. Let them base it upon why we are the best company for them. And of course, we're not the best company for everybody.
Correct.
And there are many very good companies in the state of Colorado. I work for several of them, and I think that they're wonderful. I can only really deal with what I have going here, and so we work very hard on maintaining our status and all that. And by the way, the person that generally walks into the door for a customer is not a roofer. They're purely sales, and that's okay as long as you know how to weave your way through what they're saying or not saying. This guy used to put the materials on himself. All these fingers did it for many years, so I can speak to you. The terminology is ex cathedra, with authority, all the materials and how that they're supposed to operate and how that they're installed and what we will guarantee with the workmanship that we do. But the typical person, representative from a roofing company, has never had any background whatsoever. Previous companies that I worked for, these salespeople would call me in the evening because they'd be sitting in front of a customer, and the customer would ask a question they didn't even know.
Oh, no kidding.
And they were calling me
goodness.
saying, hey, this guy wants to know about this product. It just made me laugh, you know, but that's the nature of many roofing companies today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, you know, the more you explore and ask questions, I found over time, the more comes out, because each business seems to have their own layman's words. And when a person's been in business for a long time, they can relate to customers and people in, I probably got the wording wrong, but in layman's terms, so that people can understand it, as opposed to the fancy words of fascia or whatever, you know.
No, you're exactly right. Let me tell you what's happened to me is I got a call from a gentleman a couple years ago, and he said, you know, we're going to go with your company, but you want to know why? I said, yeah, I tried to take that information, we put it together for our marketing purposes. And he says, because you met with my wife and you were explaining to her all this stuff about the contract, the roofing, the material, the colors, and all that sort of thing. And she was going to dismiss it to have you speak to me about all this stuff, so you'd have to repeat yourself and again. And you told her that you were going to make her an expert in all of this matters so that she would know about roofing, she would understand the contract. He said, because you gave her respect.
Oh, wow.
That's why we're going to go with you, because that's the kind of company we want to deal with. So he said, you don't have to go through anything with me. She's going to choose the color. I'll sign the contract and send it in. Now, what better referral can you get than that?
Oh, my goodness.
So
super. Oh, my goodness. That touches my heart. That's so wonderful.
Well, I think for me personally, I grew up with 4 sisters.
Oh, so there you go.
Well, I won't tell anybody I understand women any more than anyone else, but I have observed.
Want you to, Steve.
Yeah, I have observed a lot. and I think, you know, we would get along pretty well, you know, if we involve them in that part more. And so initially, most of us meet the wife or the female of the house before we meet any other person. And so, you know, I try to have respect for that. And I won't allow them to think that I'm thinking less of them. I want them to think you're a person, you value, and you have a brain, and you can figure this out too. And when it comes to colors, I don't go to the men.
Yeah.
I know
Probably a good idea.
It's a great idea. What the men do is you get that sample board, and it's usually like 28 inches wide, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And it generally has one main color and some spots on it up there. And the husband will look at it and go, that's the color that I want. And she goes, no, it won't work on our house. And he's going, I don't get it. And I said, well, let me explain something. She sees when you come out of your room how you're dressed from top to bottom. And if it doesn't coordinate, go try it again, buddy. So
that's a cool story. I love it.
Yeah.
What else, Steve, should people know for roofing that you can think of that I'm not asking the question about?
Well, also involve your insurance company, your agent in particular.
Okay.
Not all agents are created equal. if you don't have a personal relationship with your agent, you need to find one you can. That is, if you call up and say, hey, Joe, this roofer told me that there's some products out there I might be able to get a discount for my insurance. You never told me about it, so what's the story? You know, or, you know, it doesn't have to be negative like that. It could be great. Hey, you know what? Those guys you recommended from Independence, they're top notch, and I just want to let you know that we had a great experience with them. Now,
Oh,
if you
that's
can't
cool.
call your agent by name, then you probably have the wrong agent. So get to know them, you know, and the greater part of the ones I work with are the kinds that really are involved with their customers. Some insurance companies have rules. They're supposed to meet with their customers once a year, face to face, once every 3 years, or something of that nature. And many people have told me, I have never met my agent face to face.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So then, when they are somebody that you really have a relationship with, I think they're going to work a little bit harder to make sure that you have the proper coverage. Some people will remodel their basement, not tell their insurance. They get a fire, it's partially or totally damaged, but they don't get full replacement because they didn't tell their insurance they had a remodel in the basement. Same way with your roof. You know, if you do an upgraded product, the insurance is supposed to pay for that, but they need to know that that's involved in that situation. And so that's a good thing. And then finding out, you don't have to be an expert on products, but you should know some things about products that are out there and what's available, because stone-coated steel, it's a product that's made of the same material your car fenders are made of. They actually make roofing out of that, and they put epoxy on it in the same coating as they do asphalt shingles. It's got a 120 or more mile per hour wind rating to it. So there, you might put it on, it might cost you double right now, but you may not ever have to put on a roof again. So sellability and all of that. So dealing with the insurance and all of that, but get ahead of the game. If your roof is 10 years old or anywhere near that time frame, start finding out about it now. Because if you get a hailstorm, you'll be ready. And if you start putting money aside, because the average roof is anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, and unless you got that sitting around, you can be stuck. So get ready, because it's going to happen. So, oh, and by the way, many of the insurers have put a time frame. You have a replacement cost value, RCV policy, up until like 10, maybe 13 years. Once it gets past that, they switch over to an actual cash value, so you will only get half the money, not replacement costs.
Interesting.
And most people have been informed by the insurance by way of letter, but never read the document.
Boy, that happens an awful lot. I mean, they make the type so tiny that you're almost overwhelmed, you know, just looking at it.
It's legal language.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to mention is not that I know a ton about insurance, but I know in the mountains, we've got a place up there and we had shake roofs. And when we changed over to shingles, they lowered our insurance a little bit.
Right.
So that is something for people to consider when they're looking at the type of roofing that they want put on. You know, maybe they can get a better price. Right.
Yeah, because the many insurances will give you the new roof discount, and then many will give what they call impact resistant. They can't say hail resistant for liability's sake, but impact resistant because it's a higher standard that it meets than your typical product. Yes, it will cost you a bit more initially, but once it's on the roof, if it were to get damaged, your insurance company has to pay for replacement of what you have. So in my opinion, except for stone-coated steel, impact-resistant shingles are really the best value out there. They are worth their money.
And that's great to know. You know, people can talk about that further with you when they connect with you. Tons of great information there, Steve. Thank you. So basically, we're not going to go by size or anything like that, how you do pricing, because it probably depends on a lot of factors. But I think the information that you've given here is very valuable for how people approach it, because as we mentioned, in Colorado, we get a lot of hail damage. And that's when we get inundated with all these people from out of the state that want to come in and help us.
Right.
So we need to know the proper questions. So that was great.
Just as long as people are aware and that they start do their investigation at this point, be ready.
Yeah.
If you own a home, you got to be ready anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Your house, you have to maintain it.
Right.
Well, here is one question. What about metal roofs? Those seem to be the fad lately.
That's what stone-coated steel is.
Oh,
it is metal.
Okay.
Okay, that's metal. And it comes usually in 3 profiles. Profiles meaning the look. Some look like tile.
Oh.
Or it looks like shake shingles, like what you were talking about on your roof up there in the mountains. And some actually look like regular shingles too. They're a little flatter in profile, but they look very good and you can walk on it and all of that. Not that you'd want to get up walking around your roof, but there's several profiles. Those are good. They also make what they call standing seam. And if you're looking at it from the ground, they're just flat in the middle and then an actual seam that sticks up, and they just kind of overlap each other and it's screwed down and all of that. Those are generally for agriculture or farm or up in the mountain.
Okay.
But many people down here are starting to put it on their residential houses. I don't personally like the look on my house, but if Joe down the streets wants to do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But what about the steel? I've seen a lot of them that just look like complete metal. It's just one piece. Or pieces, but they're the big slabs, I guess you would call them, of steel.
Yeah,
and they're screwed in.
Yes. Well, there's a couple ways to fasten them down. Screwing them in is one of the methods that's in. Screwing them in where it overlaps like this, but it's screwed down on this side. That way you don't see the screws. So there's several methods on that. But there's 2 ways that those are made. They come in either 10-foot lengths, so that you just get a bunch of panels and the guy just puts it together. Yeah. The other one is he drives up to your house and he's already got a drawing from the salesperson, but he remeasures the roof and they run it out just like they do gutters. That's called extruding.
Oh,
so they extrude it on site with the exact measurement. So it goes from the ridge all the way down to the gutter, one piece. And then if you happen to have a valley, then they shorten it up with the right cut and all that stuff. So, that's just one of the ways that they do it. And it comes in lots of great colors. The paint on there is usually something like Kynar 500, which is top of the line paint, be on there forever. And there's a number of manufacturers around that do that, and a number of installers in the state of Colorado. They all go through training. Generally speaking, they do a good job. So it's one way.
So there are lots of different kinds of roofs that you can have. This just gives a wide variety for people to think about how they want to approach it, what kind of roof they want. Lots of options to think about.
Right. If you're young and you're able to afford a custom home, whatever young is, what is young? Under 40, right?
It's our age, isn't it?
And you're building a house, I would strongly recommend the consideration for steel roofing, because it's likely, if you intend to live in this house the rest of your life, it's well worth the investment, in my opinion. So just because it costs double, if you never have to replace it, you've actually saved money. So it depends. So a number of options to look at.
Yeah.
I actually considered it when I did my own roof when I lived in Arvada. I did it myself, and I considered it, the labor was free. But it was just a little bit out of my price range at that point, and I really didn't intend to stay there very long. So it didn't really work for me, but for some people it does.
Yeah. So those are the different things that you have to weigh when you're looking at replacing your roof.
Right.
What is the average length of time that people are living in the house that they're in? I'm going to use the realtor's terms, and they kind of put
how long a roof lasts in the state of Colorado based upon that information. It used to be that people were moving anywhere from 7 to 9 years. Every 7 to 9 years you'd move. At the time, and we're talking 20 plus years ago, they would say that the average roof in Colorado, and we just had typical material, asphalt, would last 14 to 18 years. With these new, what they call laminated shingles, or you actually put two pieces together to give it kind of a texture, that kind of expanded like maybe from 16 to 22 years. There's some products then that they started calling them lifetime, which is 50 years or more.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, but the warranty would say something like this: this product will last 50 years under normal weather conditions.
Okay.
What is that? So,
yeah.
how does hail fit into that situation? Is it normal? Maybe normal from Colorado, right?
Right,
Oh, and by the way,
right.
we mentioned insurance. We pay the highest insurance rate, I think, in the country here because of that reason, that being in Hail Alley. Oddly enough, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Front Range of Colorado are the top three usually.
Wow, interesting.
And I didn't know about Minneapolis until maybe about 10 years ago. Somebody was telling me that they were going to go because there was a hailstorm up there. And I'm going, you drive all the way to Minneapolis? I said, it happens there all the time. I said, really? I guess the way it comes off the Great Lakes, the wind.
Oh, good point. Yeah, could
and all
be.
of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let me corner you again. What is the average, would you say, of people moving in Colorado? Say, you said it used to be, what,
7 to
5 to
9
7 years, and
Yeah.
now is it longer?
It's less than
It's
7.
less.
Yeah. People move more often.
Oh,
Now, not
Less.
because they have to. Sometimes it's just an economic reason. Maybe we've outgrown the house that we were in and we need to upsize because we got more children, or vice versa. They need to downsize because there's only 2 of them and they've got 2,400 square feet per level for whatever reason. Sometimes it's economic, sometimes it's just practical, whatever, that it seems to be less than that now. So they dropped the number for where the average roof lasts in Colorado from 14 to 18 years, 7 to 9 years, which is not true, but they're only basing it upon the practical aspects of what I just mentioned, is that people move that often. And unless you can get a certification, you're going to sell your house. We did the roof 8 years ago. Will a roofing company, maybe the roofing company you had do the work isn't even around anymore. You have another party come in and will you certify this roof? If they're like me, I don't certify anything over 8 years. That's just me. There's a lot of other roofers that will. That's kind of a standard that I have. I have given it for roofs that are 15 years old, but it's really, really, really rare. And what that says is this roof is in good shape, no evidence of leaking, should last another 5 years. That's basically what a certification says. So some people are more willing than I am to do that, but if they can't find somebody, that means they're going to have to negotiate or replace that roof. Now, who's going to pay the $10,000?
Oof, no, yeah, ouch.
You're trying to sell so that you can take that money to a different property, because you have that equity saved up. And now, is it a buyer's or seller's market? Right now, we're dealing with the buyers,
Right.
sellers. I'm sorry. So
Sellers,
it kind of
correct.
depends.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, not enough houses on the market for sure.
Yeah, so I tell people, in my opinion, I go to that old standard. If you have a standard, the old product was called 3-tab roofing. Generally, that what they said before was correct, 14 to 18 years. If you have a laminated shingle, just think roughly around 20 years. If you have one of the premium products, it's possible to get more out of it. But once you get past 20, then you're really living on its last years. Could it go 10 or more years? Sure, but don't plan on it.
Yeah, because of how our weather is here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent
So,
information.
by the way, the manufacturers base their statistics and specifications on Colorado weather, as they do all over the country, but specifically here. Owens Corning has a plant here, and I don't know that they have an inside track because of that. But what happens is that we have the temperature changes in one day. You know, it's winter in the morning and spring in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
You know, so 40, 50 degrees
cool
isn't
thing.
unusual. So
Yeah.
just like all products that are exposed to weather, especially if the sun comes back out, the expansion and contraction is what helps break it down. So if you have asphalt shingle products that are trying to do this regularly, which they do in Colorado, then it can break down even faster. So what is our weather going to be in the next 20 years? We don't really know, but we have a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why we're here in Colorado, for the surprise.
Right. So when I tell people that, hey, you should consider this impact resistant material because it's superior material, it's been tested to be superior to your average product because of what I just said. Do you want to have to do this again in 8 years? Probably not.
It's no fun.
So, is the cost of putting on the better product worth it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Me personally, as a salesman, the cost difference between the two, I don't hardly make any money on that at all. So it's not a profitability or a wage or a commission for me so much as providing you with a good product that you can be proud of for a long time. So my advantage is not that great. But if I've done you a service to help you realize the advantage to you, and you might get a discount from your insurance company.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. Oh, great information, Steve. Wow. Thank you so much.
Who knew that roofing could be so interesting?
I know. Boy, you drew me right in. I love it.
that is actually the my good friend Eric Gemelli in 1BC. One of the greatest compliments I'd ever received from anybody, because they've had roofers in their group before, and there are other roofers in there now. And this was a couple years ago, and they were commenting about, everybody that was in the group, and Eric said that about me, that he said, boy, you know what, I look forward to those little commercials that Steve does, because who knew that roofing could be so interesting? But I looked at it for two ways. It was my business and where I made my money, but it was also, I was reminded yesterday, my artwork, because I am an artist, as you know. And so when I was up there, how it looked was important to me, even if nobody else could see it, because the details that I did when I was working on a roof were important to me, that when I walked away every day, I knew that it was not only functionally correct, but looked good, and so.
I wonder if the pilots look down and check out all the roofs as they're flying over.
Sometimes I use that analogy, by the way, because the homeowner says, oh, I don't care what the color is, only the airplanes can see it. And I said, well, maybe they're logging in and saying, that house over there on Forest Street really looks
I want that one. I want that color.
For sure.
That's hilarious. Oh, well, this is fun. So, Steve, before we go, I just love another thing about you. And the other thing is that you are into these balloons. It just absolutely fascinates me. So I've been on your Facebook page. Before we got talking, you were mentioning that you work at Golden Corral on Saturdays. What is it, from 4 to 8? And that's in Greeley. Loveland.
Right.
And you do balloons for these kids. And you've got on there the Smurf guy, and you just showed me the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Moose.
Yeah.
Can you show us some of these? And I would love to do an interview of you about how you got into doing these balloons for.
Yeah, this is a fairly new one. I just only did the colors for reference to be able to see. I was asked to do Godzilla the other day. I've been doing a T-Rex for a while, which is basically, I just don't make these sections as large as they are. But if you look at the original Godzilla, he's very hefty in the legs and all of that. And so I look at balloons two different ways: for the artistic part, cartoonish type of look, and those that actually look like the character. So, and one of the cartoonish ones we were talking about earlier is the little cow here. Isn't that funny? So kind of cartoonish looking. And I was continuing to work on the Godzilla one, so I improved his head just a little bit.
Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah.
See,
Oh,
so
much better.
depending on, again, your viewpoint and what colors that you use. So balloon twisting, generally speaking, and the people that I know in Northern Colorado, they usually do just quick and easy. And I don't think I have anything else made. My grandson was around here moving things around.
Oh, yes, repositioning, folks.
Yes. So I've been in roofing over 35 years, as we mentioned. So I'm not going to learn too much there, but I do study and practice the balloons 1 to 3 hours every day.
Wow.
And so, as you said, on my personal Facebook page, I've got an album there that's got a bunch of pictures. Plus, I post things regularly all the time for a number of reasons, to let people that are my friends aware that I'm doing this. I'm looking for work to practice, to be able to improve upon the skill there. And so everything is quick and easy. There's intermediate, which these fall more into the intermediate. And then there's sophisticated. If I'm doing a birthday party, let's say a superhero party, I might do a Spider-Man that's this tall.
Wow.
I've done Pink Panther that was taller than my wife, and she's 5 feet.
Oh, so, my goodness. How fun.
Yeah.
That probably took a little while.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I judge things. And when I charge for my balloons, that it's based upon time or how many balloons I need, which is roughly the same. So if it takes, the best thing I do is a unicorn hat. It takes 7 balloons and 7 minutes to make, so I charge $7. Yeah, it just depends. But if I did about 6 weeks ago, I did a birthday party for the 50 and over crowd.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
not over the hill yet.
Well, I've done it for the over the hill crowd too, because my parents, before they passed, were in the senior centers, and I would come in with my balloons, and not too many of the residents, the women would, not too many of the men, but the people that work there absolutely love it, and so I would give it to them. They work so hard taking care of these folks and all of that. But the 50 and over crowd, generally the men don't just jump out and start asking for things until they see what the women are getting.
Oh,
and they see
smart.
What I can do.
Smart.
And they start asking for, hey, can you do a monkey on a tree? Hey, how about an AR-15? Or
then they really jump in and have fun and get into it, huh?
Yeah, it totally is fun. And so there are characters that you can hold, and almost anything that you do is I would put on a thing around and make a hat out of the guy. So yeah, so anyway, the Golden Corral is just one of our customers. They don't pay me anything to be there. For years and years, I've been working for RJ's Amazing Entertainment. I am registered with the state of Colorado, so I do some things on my own, and I'll be doing a good portion of that as time goes on here for sure. But I've done Anheuser-Busch, Google, Comcast, Hewlett-Packard, Elks Club, Moose Lodge, Taste of Fort Collins, Corn Roast Festival, Cherry Pie Festival, and a number of other things.
Oh my goodness, wow. And you do personalized ones if people want to have birthday parties or events or that sort of stuff, so they can connect with you.
Right. So the business name is Mountain Lion Entertainment, which is really the same as the email address. You just put a 1 at the end. So Mountain Lion Entertainment 1@gmail.com.
Okay, that sounds super. Well, we'll do this again, and you can show more of your ballooning. It would be fun if we could do it in person so that you can show people. Now, you don't use all your air, do you? I hope you have a way to blow up all these balloons.
Today, the standard is using pumps, and these are double pumps, so it blows air in and out. This is the traditional way anymore. Pretty much everyone in the world has recognized that to do that. Now, if I'm in a crowd and they don't have any issues with that, blowing them up there, sometimes it makes it speedier. And you the pump, sometimes it's a bit of a pain. But It's the nature of the beast these days. And that's how I was taught, by the way. It took me a number of years to be able to even blow up with my mouth. And I was really looking forward to being speedier, because sometimes I've got 20 kids waiting for me at the restaurant.
Ooh, oh
so
my.
The faster I can go, the better.
Yeah.
But then COVID came in and it kind of threw that out of the waters.
Well, we would hate to see you faint from loss of air.
Yeah, not good.
What a fun life you have. I just have enjoyed this so much. Thank you for taking time out of your day to chat with us.
Yeah, the roofing is fun. It's pretty straightforward, and we take care of people's needs. One of their three great needs: food, shelter, clothing. We're in the shelter part. And so I enjoy being able to take care of people's needs and to be able to be outstanding in the roofing business, because there are a number of shady people out.
Yeah.
When you can do the right thing for people, you do stand out. There's no doubt about that at all.
Yeah.
So the roofing is great. The balloons, it helped me be the person that I've always been, to turn on the switch and just enjoy being with people of all ages and just, throw this stuff out. So when I practice, I'm practicing at all the different levels so that I can have stuff that anybody would be happy to have.
What a great way to connect with people. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I take them with me everywhere I go. I don't take the pumps usually, but I'm having a satchel made that will put the pumps in with some balloons, so it'll be kind of a travel case. But I usually take a handful with me, because if I'm at a house and they've got children, they may not buy a roof for me, but I guarantee they're not going to forget me.
Oh, that is so sweet. Oh my goodness. Now we have to come have you do a roof, or have you come and give an estimate just for that.
Yeah, getting together would be fun. So what we'll do is I'll bring some that are already made so that you can see some of the more sophisticated ones, because they do take time. But we'll do one or two where, I can just do it right there.
I love it. Oh, thanks, Steve, for connecting with me. Great interview.
Thank you.
We'll do this again. You take care. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.